Alright, let's start this from a different angle. When people talk about legendary rifles, the conversation usually gets hijacked by the same handful of names that show up in every history book and every war movie. Those rifles earned their reputation, no doubt about it. But real experience teaches you something else. A rifle doesn't become great because it's famous. It becomes great because it works when it matters, because it solves real problems, and because it influences what comes next. Hidden just outside the spotlight is an entire class of semi-auto rifles that were reliable, innovative, and in many cases far ahead of their time, yet somehow slipped through the cracks of mainstream recognition. These were rifles carried in jungles, dragged through mud, trusted by hunters, soldiers, and police, and quietly shaping the designs we rely on today. This list isn't about nostalgia or safe queens. It's about rifles that earned their respect the hard way and never got it. And once you understand why they mattered, you'll never look at modern rifles the same way again. Johnson Model of 1941 is one of those rifles everyone has heard mentioned in passing, but very few people truly understand. And that's a shame because this design was wildly ahead of its time. While the M1 Garand became the icon of World War II, the Johnson was quietly solving problems soldiers were actively complaining about in the field. Chambered in 30-06 and measuring roughly 43 inches overall with a 22-inch barrel, the rifle weighed about 9.5 pounds unloaded, putting it in the same general class as the Garand but with very different handling characteristics. Instead of an 8-round end-block clip that forced the rifle to run empty before reloading, the Johnson used a 10-round internal rotary magazine that could be topped off at any moment using loose rounds or stripper clips, which completely changed how a rifle could be managed under pressure. You could fire a few shots, top it off, and keep moving without ever being locked into a fixed reload cycle. That single feature earned it serious praise from Marines and airborne troops who actually carried it in combat. The rifle also featured a true quick-change barrel that could be removed without tools, something that would not become common until decades later and showed just how far ahead the designers were thinking. Its short recoil operating system allowed the barrel and bolt to move together briefly before unlocking, which reduced stress on the action and contributed to smooth recoil, but it also made the rifle sensitive to added weight on the barrel, meaning bayonets or heavy accessories could affect reliability. Compared to the Garand, the Johnson was more mechanically complex, with more small parts and tighter tolerances, which made it slower and more expensive to produce at wartime scale. By the time it was ready, the United States had already committed fully to Garand production, and logistics ultimately decided the winner. Even so, the Johnson saw real combat use in the Pacific with Marine raiders and paratroopers, where its reload, flexibility, and accuracy were genuinely respected. Today, the Johnson Model of 1941 is a serious collector's rifle, with current U.S. market prices typically ranging from about $3,000 to $6,000, depending on condition, originality, and matching parts, while rare variants can climb far higher. Its greatest legacy may not be its limited wartime service, but its rotating multi-lug bolt design, which directly influenced Eugene Stoner and became the mechanical foundation of the AR platform, making the Johnson not just an interesting footnote, but a rifle that quietly helped shape the future of modern firearms. FN Model 1949, more commonly known as the FN-49, represents the final chapter of an era where traditional gun-making craftsmanship collided with the emerging reality of modern semi-automatic military rifles. Designed by Fabrique Nationale in the immediate aftermath of World War II, this rifle was built to rearm nations that needed something dependable, familiar, and powerful without reinventing their entire logistics chain. That mission is reflected in every part of the gun, from the heavy machine steel receiver to the finely fitted walnut stock that gives it a weight and balance modern rifles rarely try to replicate. Depending on contract, the FN-49 was produced in calibers like 7x57 Mauser, 30-06, and 8mm Mauser, allowing countries to keep using ammunition they already had in stock, and that flexibility was one of its greatest strengths. Overall length sits around 43 inches with a barrel just over 23 inches, and unloaded weight typically lands between 9 and 10 pounds, giving it a steady, almost reassuring presence when shouldered. The gas-operated system uses a tilting bolt and an adjustable gas regulator, which allowed the rifle to be tuned for different ammo loads and conditions, contributing to its reputation for smooth recoil and excellent reliability with full power cartridges. Accuracy was more than acceptable for a service rifle of the period, with many examples easily holding respectable groups thanks to the rigid barrel and solid sight system. Where the FN-49 struggled was not in function, but in timing, because by the early 1950s military doctrine was already shifting towards select fire rifles and standardized intermediate calibers. As a result, the FN-49 arrived just late enough to miss the massive adoption window and instead saw service scattered across nations such as Egypt, Venezuela, Argentina, and Luxembourg. Even so, its design directly influenced FN's next major leap, paving the mechanical and conceptual road toward the FAL. Today, the FN-49 occupies a unique place in the collector world as a true missing link you can still shoot and enjoy, with current market prices often landing in the low to mid $1,000 range for decent examples, while cleaner rifles or more desirable contracts can push well beyond that, depending on condition and originality. Daewoo K2 is one of those rifles that quietly proves you do not need hype to build a world-class fighting gun, because this design blends Eastern Bloc durability with Western ergonomics better than almost anything else ever issued. Adopted by South Korea in the early 1980s, the K2 was engineered for a nation that expected hard service in rough terrain, extreme weather, and sustained field use, and that mindset shows immediately once you handle it. Chambered in 5.56 NATO, the rifle uses a long-stroke gas piston system that is closer in spirit to an AK than an AR, prioritizing reliability and tolerance over delicate tuning. Yet the layout feels instantly familiar to anyone trained on Western rifles. Overall length is roughly 39 inches with the stock extended and just under 30 inches folded, with a barrel length around 18 inches and an unloaded weight of about 8.5 pounds, giving it excellent balance without feeling front-heavy. One of the smartest design choices is the recoil system, which is fully contained within the receiver rather than relying on a buffer tube, allowing the K2 to use a true factory-side folding stock without compromising function. That makes it dramatically more compact for vehicles, tight spaces, and storage while still maintaining full reliability. Controls are intuitive and AR-like. The safety placement feels natural, and the rifle feed from standard AR magazines, which was a forward-thinking decision that still pays off today. The iron sights are robust and usable. Recoil impulse is smooth for a full-length service rifle, and accuracy is more than adequate for duty use, especially considering the piston-driven action. The South Korean military has relied on the K2 and its updated variants for decades, and its reputation for toughness was earned through real service rather than marketing. The reason it never became mainstream in the United States has very little to do with performance and everything to do with timing and import reality, since ARs and AKs already dominated the civilian market and later import restrictions turned the K2 into a rarity rather than a common shooter. Today, the rifle has shifted into collector territory, with clean examples commonly landing around the $3,000 range and climbing higher, depending on configuration, originality, and condition, making the Daewoo K2 one of the most underrated yet genuinely practical service rifles of the modern era. HKG-3 is a rifle that rarely gets the spotlight it deserves because it is often compared directly to the FAL, yet in many real-world environments it proved to be every bit as durable and sometimes even more unforgiving in its reliability. Developed by Heckler & Koch and chambered in 7.62 NATO, the G3 was built around the roller-delayed blowback operating system, a design choice that removed the need for a gas system entirely. Instead of venting gas through ports and pistons, the rifle relies on precisely engineered rollers that delay rearward bolt movement until chamber pressure drops to safe levels, resulting in a system that keeps running when fouling, dirt, and harsh conditions would choke more delicate designs. Overall length is roughly 41 inches with a 17.7-inch barrel, and unloaded weight comes in around 9.5 pounds, giving the rifle a solid and authoritative feel in the shoulder. The recoil impulse is distinct and sharp rather than smooth, especially compared to gas-operated rifles, and the fluted chamber that aids extraction is famously hard on brass, often denting or launching cases far from the shooter. Those traits are part of the G3 personality and represent the trade-off for a rifle that will fire almost anything you feed it with minimal concern for cleanliness. Accuracy is respectable for a battle rifle, aided by the rigid barrel and diopter rear sight system, which allows surprisingly precise adjustments once you're familiar with it. Ergonomics reflect its era, with controls that are functional but not as refined as modern designs. Yet the simplicity of the system contributes to its legendary reliability. The G3 saw massive adoption across Europe, Africa, and Asia, and its design spread globally through licensed production, becoming one of the most widely manufactured battle rifles in history. Original HK marked examples command premium prices far beyond what most shooters are willing to spend, but for enthusiasts in the United States today, the most practical entry point is a quality clone. New production G3 style rifles typically land in the $1,300 to $1,700 range, depending on manufacturer and features, while used examples can sometimes dip closer to the low $1,200s. What you get in return is a rifle with a reputation built on hard service, minimal tolerance for excuses, and a mechanical approach that remains unique even decades later, making the HK G3 one of the most rugged and character-filled battle rifles ever fielded. MAS 4956 is one of those rifles that proves French military design was far more practical than it is usually given credit for, and this rifle deserves real respect once you understand what it was built to do. Adopted as France's standard service rifle before the FAMAS era, the MAS 4956 reflects a philosophy focused on simplicity, balance, and real-world soldier use rather than flashy innovation. Chambered in 7.5 French, it delivers true full-power performance in a package that feels lighter and more controllable than many battle rifles of the same era. Overall length comes in at roughly 41 inches with a barrel just under 21 inches, and unloaded weight sits around 9 pounds, giving it excellent balance without feeling cumbersome. The operating system uses direct gas impingement, routing gas straight from the barrel to the bolt carrier, which keeps the mechanism light, mechanically simple, and easy to maintain in the field, a concept that would later become far more famous in other platforms. Recoil is surprisingly manageable for a full-power cartridge, and the rifle has a smooth shooting character that catches many first-time shooters off guard. Accuracy is solid for a service rifle, helped by a rigid barrel, a clean sight picture, and a straightforward trigger that breaks predictably. The rifle feeds from detachable 10-round magazines and includes features like an integral grenade launching capability and robust iron sights, reflecting its intended role as a versatile infantry weapon. Its ultimate downfall had nothing to do with reliability or effectiveness and everything to do with logistics, because the 7.5 French cartridge existed almost entirely within France, and NATO standardization had little interest in accommodating it. Despite being sidelined by politics and supply chains rather than performance, the MAS 4956 proved durable and dependable in real service, seeing use across multiple conflicts and environments. Today, it stands as one of the most underrated Cold War-era battle rifles available to collectors and shooters, with clean examples on the U.S. market commonly ranging from around $900 to $1,400 depending on condition, originality, and matching parts, while special configurations such as scoped or designated marksman variants can command noticeably higher prices. For anyone interested in a historically significant, genuinely shootable military rifle that offers full power capability without excessive weight or complexity, the MAS 4956 remains a standout that deserves far more recognition than it usually receives. Remington Model 8 stands as proof that semi-automatic rifles earned their place in hunting camps long before the idea was widely accepted, and its story begins with none other than John Moses Browning. Introduced in 1906, the Model 8 was radically different from the lever actions and bolt guns that dominated the era, using a long recoil operating system where the barrel and bolt travel rearward together, before separating and cycling the action. It is a mechanical experience that feels unusual even today, with a distinct forward and rearward movement during recoil, yet it operates with an old-school confidence that quickly earns trust. Overall length is roughly 41 inches with a barrel around 22 inches, and weight comes in near 8.5 to 9 pounds, depending on configuration, giving it enough mass to soak up recoil from its powerful cartridges. The rifle was chambered in serious hunting calibers for its time, including 25 Remington, 30 Remington, 32 Remington, and most famously 35 Remington, a cartridge that remains a legitimate hammer for deer and black bear in thick woods where shots are close and penetration matters more than flat trajectory. Feeding from a fixed 5-round internal magazine loaded via stripper clips, the Model 8 was fast, smooth, and far ahead of what most shooters expected from a semi-auto in the early 20th century. Accuracy was more than adequate for practical hunting ranges, and reliability was strong enough that people trusted it not just as a novelty, but as a primary tool for putting food on the table. That confidence extended beyond hunting, as the Model 8 also found favor with law enforcement at a time when most officers were still limited to revolvers and shotguns. Its reputation became legendary when a Texas Ranger used a modified Model 8 during the ambush that ended Bonnie and Clyde, cementing the rifle's place in American firearms history. Today, the Remington Model 8 occupies a unique space as both a shooter and a collectible, and pricing reflects that range. Rough or well-worn examples can still be surprisingly affordable, while solid shooters and desirable calibers often fall into the mid-hundreds up into the low thousands, and clean collector-grade rifles with strong finish, correct parts, or documented history can climb well beyond that. More than a curiosity, the Model 8 represents the moment semi-automatic rifles proved themselves in the real world, long before the rest of the shooting community was ready to believe. Winchester Model 100 was Winchester's attempt in the 1960s to give American hunters a semi-automatic rifle that felt refined, modern, and purpose-built for the deer woods rather than the battlefield. And in many ways, they absolutely succeeded. Introduced in 1961, the Model 100 handled more like a traditional sporting rifle than anything tactical, with clean lines, a well-shaped walnut stock, and balance that made it easy to carry all day without fatigue. Overall length is right around 42 inches with a 22-inch barrel, and unloaded weight typically falls between 7.5 and 8 pounds, which puts it squarely in the sweet spot for a hunting rifle that still soaks up recoil. It was chambered in practical, still relevant cartridges like 308 Winchester and 243 Winchester, with some early production also in 284 Winchester, giving hunters flat shooting performance and enough power for whitetail, mule deer, and similar game at realistic field distances. Accuracy was more than sufficient for ethical hunting ranges, especially considering this was a semi-auto design from an era when expectations were very different, and the gas-operated action delivered a smooth shooting experience that made quick follow-up shots easy. The detachable magazine system kept reloads simple, and the rifle's overall look fit naturally into the woods without drawing attention or feeling out of place among bolt guns and lever actions. Where the Model 100 struggled was not in how it shot, but in how it was perceived. Winchester never offered it in .30-06, and during that era many hunters simply refused to consider a serious rifle without that option, no matter how capable the alternatives were. A later firing pin recall further damaged its reputation, even though rifles that have been properly updated are generally reliable and safe shooters today. That combination of missed expectations and lingering stigma kept the Model 100 from ever reaching the popularity it arguably deserved. For those willing to look past the history, a sorted Model 100 is a genuinely pleasant rifle to shoot, with classic looks and real field utility. On today's market, prices commonly range from about $400 on the low end up to around $1,000, depending on condition, caliber, and originality, while especially clean examples or desirable configurations can push higher. For hunters and collectors alike, the Winchester Model 100 remains one of those overlooked classics that quietly proves semi-automatic sporting rifles were viable long before they became mainstream. Ruger Mini 14 is one of those rifles that spent decades doing real work while flashier platforms soaked up attention, and its reputation was built quietly through use rather than hype. Introduced in the 1970s and based on a scaled-down M14 action, the Mini 14 uses a Garand-style rotating bolt paired with a fixed piston gas system that is famously tolerant of dirt, neglect, and varied ammunition. That operating system gives the rifle a mechanical honesty that appeals to shooters who value function over fashion. And it also contributes to its long service life in ranch trucks, patrol cars, and private collections across the country. Overall length is typically just under 38 inches with an 18.5-inch barrel. An unloaded weight sits around 6.5 to 7 pounds, depending on configuration, making it light, quick to shoulder, and easy to carry for extended periods. Chambered in 5.56 NATO and feeding from detachable magazines, the Mini 14 delivers practical performance in a package that feels more like a traditional sporting rifle than a modern military arm, which is exactly why it found acceptance in places where black rifles brought unwanted attention. Ergonomics are simple and familiar. The safety is intuitive, and the rifle balances naturally without feeling front-heavy. Early production rifles earn a reputation for inconsistent accuracy, particularly as barrels heated and groups began to string, and that criticism was deserved at the time. Modern production has largely addressed those issues through improved barrel profiles, tighter manufacturing tolerances, and overall refinement, resulting in rifles that are far more consistent for realistic defensive and field distances. The Mini 14 was never intended to compete directly with the AR platform in terms of modularity or accessories, and that is part of its identity rather than a weakness. It prioritizes reliability, handling, and a low-profile appearance over chasing trends or endless customization. Today, the Mini 14 remains a uniquely American semi-auto that bridges the gap between classic rifle design and modern utility, and it continues to appeal to shooters who want something rugged, familiar, and effective without drawing unnecessary attention. In current pricing, the standard Mini 14 Ranch rifle carries an MSRP around $1,200 new, with real-world retail often hovering in that same general range, depending on variant, finish, and availability, making it a premium but proven option for those who value reliability and understated practicality over fashion. These rifles prove that history doesn't always reward innovation or reliability. Sometimes it just rewards timing. Each of these designs solved real problems, influenced future platforms, or delivered performance that mattered in the field, even if the mainstream never gave them the spotlight. Now I want to hear from you. Which one of these got the worst deal? And which sleeper semi-auto rifle do you think belongs on this list? Drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay locked in for the next deep dive. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and keep training.